Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode on how to create a provisioning policy in this new series that we just launched here today, which is called Windows 365 Hands-On. My name is Morten Pedholt. I'm a Windows 365 MVP and cloud architect at Apento, and with me today I have Ola. Welcome,
Yes,
Ola.
thank you. My name is Ola Ström. I also a Windows 365 MVP based out of Sweden. Work for a company called Advania, who's a Microsoft partner.
Yeah, it's so great to be here with you today, Ola, and we are going to look at provisioning policy at Windows 365, how to create them, how to use them, and how to get started with them. So maybe you can share a screen here.
Yeah, we have the screen up and running. So we start this whole journey often in June, like we do with everything related to Windows 365 Enterprise, I will say. So to get a Windows 365 machine up and running, we need to create a provisioning policy. And to do that, we jump into devices, and then we navigate to the blade called Windows 365. And blade is only available if you have any licenses active in your tenant. So if you don't have any licenses, this blade will just show you a sign saying, please get some licenses before continuing. And you won't be able to do anything. So that's kind of the prerequisite to even get started. And you get the license the same way you would get your Windows 365 licenses, or Microsoft 365 licenses, that is, through your licensing partner or through the admin portal.
Yeah, exactly. So go figure out your licenses, buy all the licenses that is required for Windows 365, and then jump back in here so you can start configuring it.
Yes. So in this Windows 365 Blade, we have a lot of different tabs to choose from. Today, we will just focus on the provisioning policies, but we will revisit the other ones later on in the series. But let's jump into the provisioning policy Blade, and we can in here see all the provisioning policies we have already created. But today we'll create a new one to guide you through how this works. So we click Create Policy. And the first thing we need to do is to give our policy a good name. And a good name is something that makes sense to you in your environment. There's no right and wrong in this. So we'll just call this demo 1 for now.
Yeah, I mean it's the name is like pure metadata, right? So it could be anything that you will like, but it's always good to have a good structure of it. And you can also use this name to like create a production and test environment. So this name here on the provisioning policy will actually be the name that your assignment profile on your cloud PC will be. And that way you can use device filters to targeting specific environments if you want to test like an application or configuration profile before you hit your production. So this is where you need to do it.
Exactly. But today we'll just keep it simple and not do anything fancy. So we'll just call it demo 1. We can also add a description if we want to explain what this policy does, or if we have one of those more extensive names like Morten just had as an example, we can write the explanation for the name in the description, just like with any other policy. The next step we need to do a selection is which license type we have. You have two options in here. You can use the enterprise one or the frontline one. And the frontline is where we have more pooled licenses. But today we'll focus on the enterprise license, which is the most commonly talked about license at the moment, I would say. But the frontline is a pretty cool one as well, but we'll cover that another time. When we've selected our license type, we'll move down to join type details. With the Windows 365, we can either Entra join them or we can hybrid Entra join them. What was previously called Azure AD join and hybrid Azure AD join. So depending on our selection here, we get other options down the line. To use the hybrid join, we need to have an Azure network connection set up in order to connect to our on-premise AD and get line of sight of the domain controller.
But to simplify things, definitely try to aim for that Microsoft Entra join instead. It will also provision your cloud PC much faster, and it will just be less complicated overall. But there's definitely support for hybrid environments, for sure.
Yeah. And when we've selected our join type, we'll stick with Entra join. Like Morten said, it's the more simpler one, and also maybe the more modern one way of doing things. We can select which type of network we want. We can either use a Azure network connection, where we can route the network to our own resources, and we control the network, so you bring your own network. Or we can use the Microsoft hosted network, which is making use of the extensive network that Microsoft already has set up for this service in all supported regions. We don't really have to care about configuring all the details around the network. So in order to do this, we select which geography we want to keep our machines in, because this will actually decide on where in the world our Windows 365 cloud PCs are provisioned. So if we want to keep them in Europe, in the European Union, we select European Union as the geography. We can also in here target specific data centers if we want for some reason to keep it in Sweden, for legal reasons or something like that. But we'll just keep it with the recommended, which is automatic, so it will select by itself where it should be provisioned.
And one cool note here, Ola, is that you can actually move your cloud PC to another region. So if you're provisioning a cloud PC for use in, for example, Sweden, and that user moves to another country, you can actually move that cloud PC with the new feature. Maybe we have time to show that afterwards, but it's kind of cool.
Yeah, and for just an example, I have customers who set up this fairly early on. They provisioned everything in Amsterdam in the West Europe data center, which was the only available region in Europe at that point in time. But now they want to move their workload specifically to the Swedish data centers. So you could utilize that feature that you mentioned to have those machines moved fairly easy, instead of just having to redeploy them, which makes life as an admin a lot easier.
Yeah, definitely.
The last selection we can do on this page is to use to enable single sign-on or not. This is still a preview feature, but it's been very solid since it was introduced as a preview feature, and hasn't really changed more than the name on this page, to be honest.
True. I actually have customers using that feature, even though it's on preview, but it's just working. That's all I can say from the feedback I got from my customers, at least.
Yeah, I had the same experience. It works really well. It makes life easier for the users, since there's one less sign into the application. So when we're done, we just hit next, and we'll end up on the page to select which image we want to use. In here, we can select either from the Microsoft Gallery Images, which is a list of all the supported Windows versions out there right now. So we have both Windows 10 and Windows 11. And as you can see, there's two versions of each release as well. We have one with the Microsoft 365 apps and one with only the OS optimizations. But for now, we'll just use the default one. I selected the same one we had selected, but we could also do custom images if we for some reason want to maintain our own golden image for the solution. But this kind of takes away the beauty of the simplicity of the service, that we want to use this as a true SaaS service and use built-in features that someone else takes care of, basically. But if we for some reason need a custom image where you would have to set up all those OS optimization yourself, that's absolutely a possibility.
Yeah, I just want to add a quick note here, is that if you truly want to use the custom image, go ahead and do it. It's fully supported. Just be aware that with the gallery images, there are some specific components that exist. For example, Teams optimization, multimedia redirection optimization, right? And all of those things you have to handle and manually update on your image each time. So that's just a very important part of the end user experience. So just keep that in mind. It is all documented on the Microsoft docs. And I think that we will put a link in the description down below to it. But just keep in mind that custom images is a bit of a hurdle to manage.
Exactly. So when we've selected our image, we'll just hit next. And we end up on the configuration part of of this setup, where we can select which language and region we want to use. So if we, for example, want this to be for our Swedish users, we'll select Swedish, which will give us a Swedish language on the client and also Sweden as a region. But we could just as easily select Danish, and it will end up with Danish as the language and have Denmark as a region.
Yeah, and that way you can actually create multiple provisioning policies to give the end user in a different part of the world their own language to have, right?
Exactly. You can localize the experience a lot easier, which is awesome. We also have the option to use custom naming for our Cloud PC. So the default name for Cloud PC is CPC -5, the 5 first characters of the username, and then -5 random digits or characters. But we can add our own naming standard to this to make more sense in our environment. If we have a specific naming convention that we follow for our clients, we can adhere to that in this section.
Yeah, it's very similar to Autopilot profiles, where you also can do like a device name template. I just think there's a few more options in this one, right? You don't have the username in the Autopilot one.
Exactly, and like you said, you have the username in this one, but we don't have serial number in this one. There's no serial number in on the Windows 365 machines in that sense. But the only thing that's good to keep in mind here is that when you do custom naming, you need to have at least 5 random characters in the names. Otherwise, it won't allow you to continue. So, but it's also stated in here, and it won't let you continue with your configuration if you don't adhere to that. But we'll skip the custom naming for now and just move on. So the last step before we review and create our policy is to assign this to a group of users who are allowed to get their will be allowed to get a Cloud PC based on this template.
Yeah, if you're using groups for licensing purpose, you can actually reuse those groups, so you will have one group to manage everything, right? For licensing and provisioning policies. It can be a bit of a hurdle when you're having a bigger environment with different provisioning policies, user having the same Windows 365 licenses. Then you kind of have to have separate groups to manage both.
Yeah.
Looking at the bigger customers I've been working with who is using Windows 365, they've gone down that route that we have one group for provisioning policies, because then we can select where in the world they went up, and then we just use one generic group for licensing for that specific license that we want to use. But in here, we'll select our Windows 365 Finance group, which is our example group in this case, and we'll just select that one and hit next, and we can review all the selections and options that we did before we hit create. And now we have our first, or in this case, second provisioning policies created in our environment.
Cool.
But like you mentioned, Morten, it's not only the provisioning policy that's needed to get the Cloud PC up and running, because as you can see, it didn't provision. We need to give the user a license before anything happens.
Yeah, exactly.
So given that we give our user a license, the machine will spin up, and it will take, what do you say, 30, 60 minutes, depending on the configuration and application deployment and things like that.
I mean, typically if you're doing hybrid environments, 60 minutes is, I think, the average because of the synchronization from on-premise AD to the cloud, right? But I would say roughly my customers are about 30 minutes, 25 minutes actually. It's pretty fast. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm saying the same numbers, which is pretty consistent to be around 30 minutes before it's done and the user actually gets access to it.
Yeah. And one important note here is that you can only have one provisioning policy per user, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're not able to spin up multiple cloud PCs in multiple provisioning policy for users?
No, not using the enterprise version.
we'll just leave it as a little bit of a cliffhanger because
Yep.
there are pretty cool stuff we can do with Frontline, but we'll get back to that.
Yeah.
But like you said, if we assign a user to 2 different provisioning policies, they will only get it on one. And you can only have one machine with the same SKU of license. So if I already have one machine on a policy, to get another one with the same provisioning policy, I need a different license. If I need either a bigger or smaller machine in some way to get a secondary machine on the same configuration, same provisioning policy.
Cool. Thank you, Ola. Thank you so much for showing this. It was really awesome. And
Thank you.
yeah, thank you for watching, and we hope to see you next time. Take care.